Hello and welcome back to my World of Stuff. My name is Paul Mount. Right, it's been a while. I've done a video for about a week. Apologies for that. I think the last video I did was Oppenheimer, which I saw the day it came out a week ago yesterday, it being today, Saturday, the 29th of July. I haven't done anything since then. It's been a bit of a busy sort of week. Deadlines coming up for the magazine Starburst that I write for. Which has kept me quite busy, and I've had to do a few extra bits and pieces. Normally I just do a TV review column every month, but I've done a little bit more this month. There's a couple of features, a couple of interview things. That's kept me quite busy. The week's just flown by, really. I haven't had a chance to sit in front of the camera. I didn't really have anything much to talk about. However, I thought I would do a video this weekend, a bit of a TV and film catch-up. Films I've watched on streaming services, and some TV series that are recommendations for things you might want to take a look at if you haven't seen them yet. So let's get on with it. Right, so as I said, it's a bit of a catch-up of a few titles which might be of interest for you. If you're looking for a bit of entertainment and you're tired of wandering around the streaming services, these are things that I've watched that are either on streaming services now or on their way. Sometimes I get to see things a bit early and it's hard to keep up with exactly when they're out. However, I'll start with the TV stuff I've been watching recently. I've watched quite a few things on streaming recently which have been excellent shows that I've really enjoyed, and I just want to give you a recommendation, the sort of things you might be watching anyway, but just in case you haven't, you really need to watch the following TV show, starting with one called Hijack. You may well have heard of this. It's been a bit of a buzz about it. This is on Apple TV Plus. Now, I realise this is a streaming service that a lot of people don't have, but if you do have it, have access to it, I really recommend that you take a look at this show. It's a 7-part British thriller series. I'm a bit selective with British TV because of our obsession with detectives and the police and so on. And there is a bit of that in this because it involves a hijacking, a high-stakes hijacking, and the involvement of the police and the UK government, their response to that hijacking. The series stars Idris Elba. He plays a man who's separated from his wife and son. The wife is in a new relationship with a police officer played by the always excellent Max Beasley. Idris Elba's character is on his way back to London from Dubai. He boards this luxury sort of jet, which has got about 200 passengers. But not long after it takes off, it's hijacked by a group of terrorists led by the excellent Neil Maskell. Aboard the plane, we have Ben Miles, who plays the captain of the plane. So there's a bit of hair in my eye. What's going on here? So what develops there, and it's sort of in real time. It's a bit 24-ish in that every episode ostensibly tells the story of that hour, that 45 minutes or whatever. The plane has been hijacked, we know for not reason, for a few episodes. Down below, communication's been cut off, and air traffic controllers en route between Dubai and London, they can't get hold of the plane, and suspicions are aroused, not least with character played by Eve Miles back in the UK. She's a air traffic controller in London, and it's just really irritating. Oh, it's gone now. Sorry. She has an inkling that something's gone wrong because she realises they can't pick them up. They get a distress message to say that there's a crisis. Then the kidnappers force the pilot to reverse that and say, no, everything's under control, it's not a problem. But it soon becomes obvious across the episodes that there are severe problems. And we flash sort of back and forth between the plane. There are about 4 or 5 terrorists walking up and down the aisles, threatening everybody, making everybody stay where they are. As I say, we don't know for a few episodes what's going on. Idris Elba, he is basically somebody who's just trying to do the right thing. I think he's a negotiator in his everyday life, but even he is sort of powerless to put up much of a resistance or find a solution to what's going on. It's this very tense, edge of the seat stuff, and it's really nice to see British television doing something with a bit of kick to it. Normally we get these sort of sleepy detective things or these rather mundane procedural dramas and soap operas and so on. So it's nice to see British television making a good, well-budgeted action show, because it is an action show in all intents and purposes. 6 episodes have been screened so far. It's very nice. It's very. I think we had the first 2 episodes dropped originally, and then the remaining 5 have filtered out over the last few weeks. It's actually really nice to watch a program which is on every week rather than just binging a whole series. It sort of extends the pleasure of watching a show when it's not over and done in a week or so, where you watch it over 7 or 8 weeks. And there is a feeling that it's sort of building as a series. I think if this was on ITV or BBC, it would be a huge Line of Duty style hit. So it's on Apple, which I say isn't one of the most subscribed channels. But if you are thinking of getting another streaming channel to supplement, say, Netflix or Amazon, really recommend Apple Plus, because they have some excellent shows on there. Another of which is coming up now. Silo. Yeah, this is my show of the year so far. I absolutely adore this series. This is a 10-episode dystopian science fiction type series based on a series of books, in fact, by Hugh Howey, which came out about 10, 11 years ago. I was aware of the books, certainly the first book, Wool, which I remember seeing in Asda on the bookshelves, and I always have a look at the books in the supermarket bookshelves. You never know what you're going to find there. And I read the back of it and thought, this looks a bit sort of hard sci-fi, but it does sound quite interesting. Never read it, and there have now been a couple of sequels to it, and this is the first TV series based on the first book. And it's such a clever idea, and it's so brilliantly done as a TV series. It stars Rebecca Ferguson, who you know as Ilsa Faust in the most recent Mission Impossible 2 or 3 films. And she's a great actress. She's Germanic, and she's got that cold, slight aloofness, but a deep humanity in her as well. She plays a character called Rebecca. I've watched the series. I cannot try and remember the name. Rebecca. She works down in what they call the down deep of this silo. The silo is an underground chamber, if you like, a deep pit, a silo built around a circular spiral staircase, where 10,000 survivors, or the descendants of the survivors of some unnameable Holocaust, which has wiped out life on Earth, they're all hiding in this silo because they're told the surface of the planet is radiated, it's dangerous, that it's uninhabitable. But there are some within the community in the silo that have some doubts about this. They question it. There are relics from the past which are found, but are banned. People aren't allowed to talk about what happened in the past or theorise about whatever happened in the past. The whole community is run by this slightly sinister militia called the Judicial, who sort of stamp on any talk of, what's going on up there. In the first couple of episodes, we meet the sheriff, Holston, who's played by David Oyelowo, and his wife, who's played by Rashida Jones. They're just trying to get pregnant. They're trying to start a family, and because of the limitations in space, it's very difficult to be allowed to get pregnant. But she's become involved in this sort of conspiracy theorist chap who she's met, who appears to know a little bit more about what's happened in the past, and she decides that she wants to go outside to find out for herself what it's like out there. Now, in the silo, anybody who voices the view that they want to go outside, they have to go outside. They can't rescind it. There's no way around it. They have to go out. So they're encased in these sort of protective suits, and they go out into this blasted landscape. But it isn't quite what it appears to be when they get out there. Eventually, Rebecca Ferguson's character becomes the lead character, and she also gets involved in this conspiracy to find out that there's a lot more to the silo than any of them realised. It's odd, because I talked about police series, and this is very much in many ways a police procedural, because she becomes the sheriff of the silo. She's investigating 2 murders, and that leads her to uncover this conspiracy, if you like, about what's really outside. It's a fantastic series. It really is one of those shows that you do binge. I binged it very quickly because I literally couldn't not watch the next episode. It has very clever cliffhangers that you can't leave it there. You've got to go on to watch the next one. And certainly I watched the last 3 episodes a couple of weeks ago in a row. And I was watching 1 or 2, but the last 3 I thought, I'm going to binge these because this is such a great show. Again, fantastically recommended. And as I said, it's an Apple Plus series. If you haven't got Apple Plus, it's difficult because there are so many streaming services and so many of them are doing good stuff But I think Apple Plus is really up there with the best of them at the moment. They're doing some really good, imaginative stuff. That's Silo, which is on Apple Plus now. Moving over to... Sorry, I keep thinking that the door's going to burst open and a cat is going to come crashing in. Moving over to your more traditional streamers. Netflix has got a new series of Black Mirror. This is very exciting because I'm a massive fan of Charlie Brooker, who created Black Mirror for Channel 4 12 years ago, whatever it was, maybe longer. This is a series which is sort of the dark side of technology, I think. Charlie Brooker's looked at the technology that's becoming available and technological developments and how they might not necessarily benefit humankind going forward. The series started off on Channel 4. They axed it because they couldn't afford it anymore. So Netflix took it up. And they've now run this the fourth sort of series that they've done. Although Series 5 was only really 3 episodes. This is a chunkier run of 5 episodes. I was really surprised when this turned up on Netflix in June because I knew that it was coming. I knew there was a new series on the way. I didn't realise it had been filmed. I knew it had been written and I thought they must be filming it at the moment. So when these 5 episodes dropped back in June, it was fantastic. And I've eked them out over a few weeks because there are 5 and they're so good you just want to save them. You don't want to binge them no matter how much you're tempted to. And this, I wasn't a massive fan of the 5th series. As I said, it was only 3 episodes and they didn't seem to be Black Mirror at its best. But this series is very good because Charlie has now gone back to the idea of Black Mirror and sort of twisted it slightly. So it's not so much about technology, it's about people. It's holding up a Black Mirror to people and human nature, the way people behave and the things that they do. When the series arrived, there was a lot of publicity about the first episode, Joan is Awful, which effectively stars Salma Hayek. And it's about a woman who comes home from work, puts on the TV on a streaming service, which is Netflix by any other name, and discovers that the TV series exists called Joan is Awful, which is about her. And her life is reflected. What she's done that day is reflected on a drama which appears on the streaming service. This is... I suppose this episode is the closest to what Black Mirror is known for, doing these stories about technology, because it sort of looks at a thing which is very current at the moment about AI and creating images of people and copying people, because that's partly what the actor strike in America is about at the moment, these sort of discussions and disputes about the use of AI replacing proper talent and proper performers in film and television. And this is, to an extent, a little bit about that. So once again, Charlie Brooker is ahead of the curve or alongside the curve with what's contemporary and what's current. It's a great episode. It's quite comedic in places. There are certain things that happen that are laugh out loud funny, but it is a very clever episode that sort of pastiches that sort of reality TV, people watching themselves, Gogglebox, that sort of thing. It's a great episode, and it's a great series. There's not one duff episode in here. And what's interesting is that at least 3 of them are feature length. By that I mean about 85 minutes long. So, they're not far short of film length. I think the shortest is Maisie Days, I think, which is... It's hard to call it the last one because there are 5 of them. We watch them in any order. That one's only about 45, 50 minutes long. And that's a really good episode, which appears to be about the media and paparazzi and the lengths they'll go to get a story at whatever the cost. It is that, and then it goes off into a crazy tangent that I'm not going to spoil here, but it really goes off on a curve. The other stories are all great. I mean, I've watched them all now. There's Demon 79, which is a fantastic episode set in 1979 about a woman who enters a strange Faustian pact with a demon creature who manifests himself as the lead singer from Boney M, for reasons that will become clear when you watch it. It's a good, intelligent episode that deals with the racism of the National Front and stuff that was around back in those days. And it's a very good episode, very well made, because it's got a sort of a slightly drab sepia tone to it, a bit like the 70s, towards the end of the 70s, when the world just seemed a little bit more colourless. It's a great episode with a fantastic ending. Then we got, I think it's called Loch Henry, which is about our obsession with serial killers and grisly murderers and our peculiar fascination with knowing things about people like that and want to know the minutiae of it. It's about these 2 film students who investigate a serial killing in a remote area up in the sort of the Lake District area, with unpleasant consequences, if you like. And then there's a terrific episode, the title of which unfortunately eludes me, but it stars Aaron Paul and Josh Hartnett, about two astronauts in 1969. It's sort of an alternative 1969, and they're on a very long space mission in this space station above the Earth. But down on Earth, their family lives continue with these sort of facsimiles of themselves, and they can enter a sort of a chamber which puts them into those bodies. So they're still on Earth, but still up on the satellite at the same time. Something is a tragedy, which means that they have to compromise what they do on the space station to maintain that humanity. And it's it's about the lengths that people will go to retain their humanity, I suppose. Again, it's another terrific episode. Great performances. What I like about Black Mirror, it always does this. There's a couple of episodes that are very typically British, but then you've got these more international, sort of lavish American ones, which are set in America and have American vistas, American actors and so on. And I think I'm glad to see that Black Mirror has carried on this tradition in this later series. It's absolutely terrific stuff. It's a 5-episode series that you don't want to miss, to be honest. My final TV recommendation is the latest. No, I've got two more, in fact. The latest from Marvel is the next one. It's Secret Invasion, which is, at the time of recording this, just finished last week. 6-episode series starring the always brilliant Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. A more jaded and exhausted and older Nick Fury, frankly. He's been up in space for years. He's come back down to Earth because of a threat to the future of the Earth by the Skrulls. An alien species who have lost their planet. They've come to Earth, and we've tried to absorb them into Earth culture, but for certain reasons they are rebelling against that. They want the planet, they want to destroy the planet and take it over for themselves. I did like this series. Marvel's TV shows have been hit and miss. When they've been good, things like WandaVision and Hawkeye, the top tier Marvel. When they're bad, She-Hulk, I'm looking at you, they're really bad. This is sort of, I did enjoy this. It's sort of mid-ground somewhere. It's not fantastic, but it's a lot better than some of the things that we've had. And it's always good to see Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. He is sort of takes us right back to the early days of Marvel from his cameo at the end of Iron Man. It's a great performance as this older Nick Fury. It's a more adult series. There's more blood and violence. There are some great action set pieces, particularly in the end of episode 5. There's this sort of ambush that takes place, which is really spectacular. And there's some great acting. We've got Olivia Colman, who's sort of Dame Olivia Colman, which is inevitable. She plays this British intelligence chief, and her performance is absolutely fantastic. She's got the best lines. She's obviously really enjoying herself, the way she delivers these lines. She's just a delight to watch in this. Ben Mendelsohn is back as Talos, who's sort of Nick Fury's tame Skrull friend. Emilia Clarke is here as Gaia. She is Talos' daughter. She's involved with this group of Skrull terrorists who are led by Kingsley Ben Adir is his name. Great performance from him, full of malevolence, but he's chosen to perform in a very strong Cardiff Butetown accent. Anybody who lives in that area will know what I mean. It's very odd. And the first couple of episodes, I couldn't pin down that voice, where the accent was from. And then there was a press interview where he said, I just heard it as this, for the Butetown area, Cardiff. It's a very noticeable accent if you're from the area, sort of, watch out Fury, I'm coming for you sort of thing. And it's a very Welsh thing without being a typical Welsh accent. And that was sort of putting me off slightly, I must admit, because it just sounded like an accent that I hear quite often. You have other people in it. You've got some other Marvel regulars. Martin Freeman appears sort of briefly. We have Rhodey, played by Don Cheadle, who is an Avenger. But it tries to be, I know it was intended to be in the style of Captain America Winter Soldier, sort of a dark espionage sort of thriller. And it's entertaining. I liked it more than a lot of people, I think. It kept me watching. It was an intriguing story. I think there were places where there were problems with the pacing. And something I've noticed in a lot of American shows, you do have, and it's particularly the next show I'm talking about as well, you do have long extended scenes of two people in a room talking. about their relationship or the plot or the story. And that's an odd thing that I've noticed in a lot of American shows, that you do have a lot of this static shots of two people talking, sitting talking, standing talking, walking talking. Very odd, and there's a lot of it in this, particularly I think in episode 5, where every scene seemed to be two people talking until we had the big action scene at the end. But ultimately, I did enjoy it. I think the last episode, there was a typical sort of Marvel super being fight at the end, which I enjoyed. It's always nice to see that sort of thing. But I think that a certain plot development at the end in relation to one particular character does make you go, what? This person's what now? And it's sort of, I don't know what repercussions that's going to have for Marvel going forward, because they've now created a character who is so incredibly powerful. That person's going to be very hard to feature in an ongoing story. But I enjoyed the series. It's one of Marvel's better efforts. And bearing in mind that we have to accept, I think, that Marvel has peaked and is off the obvious ball. It's no longer the new kid on the block. And of course, every Marvel project is now suffering from the fact that the big hitters aren't there. Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a great film, finished that particular arc. Thor is no longer the Thor we used to know. Captain America, Iron Man, these characters are gone now. So Marvel are playing in a smaller sandbox with less well-known or less intriguing characters. And I think this does suffer from not having a big hitter character apart from Nick Fury. But it's enjoyable. I did enjoy it. Again, I think I'm watching a lot of shows at the moment that have long episodes, 50 minutes, an hour. These episodes are generally around 30, 35 minutes. So it's a punchy show. But I think it's one of Marvel's better TV efforts, and it's worth a look if you haven't seen it. And the final TV recommendation is one on Now TV. It's another streamer. It's called From. This is the second series of this very singular American horror show. Now, the first series last year was my favourite new show of the year, probably my favourite show of the year. If you haven't seen it, it's set in this slightly run-down one-street town somewhere in America. People who find themselves in this town can't get out. There's no way out. They drive round to get out, and they end up back where they started. And the first series started off with this family on vacation, finding themselves in this village, this town. But the town has a terrible secret, because after dark, strange and frankly bloody terrifying creatures emerge from the woods. And they will absolutely eviscerate anybody that they come across. But they're not monsters in the traditional sense, because they appear to be human. They look like humans. They're dressed in normal clothes. One character is sort of a bride, another one's a bus conductor or chef or something. But when they get close to the victims, their faces change into these sort of vampiric, monster, parasite-y sort of things. There are some scenes in the first episode which are probably as terrifying as anything I've ever seen. Scene in the first episode where we first discover these creatures, and later on they break into a house where a lot of the people in the village live, and they got these smiles, these beatific smiles on their faces, but they want to do terrible things. But we don't know what those terrible things are. And that was the secret that powered the first series. What's going on in this village? Why can't people get out? Where do these creatures come from? What are they? And now we've had the second series, which I just about finished watching. And it's great, but the trouble is it hasn't begun to answer any of those questions. And in fact, it's just asked a lot more. There are a lot more mysteries and secrets and things that have happened. There's a plot line where one of the main characters, the sheriff, played by Harold Perrineau, who used to be in Lost, he gets infected by these strange worm-type creatures that you can see wriggling under his flesh. I think we've seen things like that before, way back in as far as the X-Files. That resolves itself slightly conveniently in episode 7, but I didn't mind that. But there are more and more mysteries. People hallucinating these ghastly, ghostly children. Piles of rocks that are appearing in places. In the first episode, Harold Perrineau's character, the sheriff, has gone into this tree, and he's found himself in this underground kingdom, underground domain, like a sort of an underground dungeon cellar or whatever, where this aged man is sort of tied up. There's a lot of mysteries in this, but I think, much as I've enjoyed the second series, and I've been binging it because I like it, there are two problems. One, they bring in lots of new characters. It starts off with a bus arriving to a bus full of people. So as well as all the characters we already had, we have lots of new characters. Not all of them are featured characters, but there are new people. And it is one of those series that I've watched all the episodes, I couldn't tell you the names of many of the characters. I know who they are and what the relationships are, but the names I couldn't tell you. So I think it may, I'm hoping it doesn't, but it may suffer from lost syndrome, where the writers have no idea what this is about, but just tossing in little scraps and little ideas as it goes along to keep the mystery going, and will then tie it up unsatisfactory. I really hope that's not the case, because the setup is great. The horror element with these creatures is genuinely scary when they appear. There's a really good sequence in episode 6 where one of the characters gets stabbed, and some of the other characters have to get him from this colony house where they're living across the town in the night when these creatures are roaming, and that's really very tense and very exciting. Again, it has a lots of scenes of two people talking in rooms, and you sort of think, yeah, just get on with it now. So I think there are pacing issues in the second series, and the fact that they are just throwing in little tidbits of more things to think about. And I hope that it has been renewed for the third series. I don't know if that's going to be the last series, but I just really hope that the people who've made this show know where they're going with it, and it's not just going to become some sort of jumble of inane, unbelievable resolutions, because it's such a good show. I really want it to end well with a proper conclusion that makes sense. That's From, which is on Now TV. Well, now. Right, some films I watched just to wrap up on various forums. I think there's 4 I'm going to talk about. First one I'll talk about is the Wham film, which is on Netflix. I was a big fan of Wham back in the 80s. In fact, I remember when Wham first appeared in 82 with Wham Rap, I'd already marked them out as something a bit different. I'm a big sort of pop music person. I don't do rap and all that sort of stuff, but I do like a good pop song. And there was something about the first 2 Wham singles, Wham Rap and Young Guns, which is the one which sort of broke them. And I felt that there was something here in the idea of these 2 young lads, encapsulating the 80s, that feeling of the 80s, of disillusion and discontent with life and what it was offering. And you could see, I think, in those early performances that there was something special about George Michael that even he didn't know at that stage. This is a sort of 90-minute film, which is basically composed of archive footage and new narration from Andrew Ridgeley. So there's no new film material, but it's a fantastic collage of great clips and headlines and things that tells the story of Wham. And don't forget, Wham were only around for about 4 years. They did 2 albums and a handful of singles. And as they say in the film, they became much more successful, much more quickly than they ever anticipated. And I think that they both knew, particularly George Michael knew, that he couldn't be contained in this boy band structure, and he had to go on to do something else. So I think Wham had a built-in obsolescence. But it's a great documentary. If you're interested in 80s music and all Wham and George Michael, it's one to watch, definitely. Couple more films. A film called Kind of Kidnapping. This is streaming on Amazon now. This is a film that 3 weeks ago I'd never heard of, until I discovered that there was a screening of it one Sunday night at an art centre in Cardiff that I occasionally frequent. It's written and directed by Dan Clark, who is a comedian, actor, writer. You may know him from a BBC Three comedy series called How Not to Live Your Life. They ran for 3 series, 10 or so years on BBC Three, before it went digital only and before it came back. A really clever sort of surreal comedy series about this slacker who inherits a house from his grandmother and the peculiar people that he sort of gathers around him. It's very quirky, very unusual. And he's now, I haven't heard from him for years. I was intrigued when I saw that this film has been shown. And there was also going to be a Q&A chapter, the place I'm talking about in Cardiff does a lot of this. They get people in to talk about the films they've made. And this is a film, very, very limited release, a couple of screens across the country, I think. And this was all part of the promotional campaign. I think that Dan and some of the cast were travelling around the country doing Q&As. It was quite a full house, which I was pleased to see. It's only a small cinema, but it was very full. And Dan Clark was there. The film also stars Kelly Wenham. She is, in fact, Dan Clark's wife, and a new young Welsh actor called Jack Parry-Jones, and Patrick Bilardi, who a lot of you will remember as Neil from The Office. He's been in loads of things, Stella, and he turns up all over the place. Really good, solid British actor. And they all turned up for this Q&A. The film itself is, as the title might imply, kidnapping film. It's about these 2 young people whose careers aren't going the way they want to be. The girl, played by Kelly Wenham, she wants to be an actress, but she can't get a break. Her partner, Brian, he's into computers, but he can't afford to enroll on a computer course, so he's working on taxis. And they just get frustrated with the fact that they can't get anywhere in life. They're about to be evicted from their flat. Poverty's staring them in the eye. And then the opportunity arises to get rich quick. They end up kidnapping a politician called Hardy, played by Patrick Ballardi. Contact his wife to try and get, I think it's £100,000 ransom. But she doesn't want him back because he's been a bad boy and she's sick of him. And the situation then twists on its head a little bit when Hardy sees a way to make a name for himself. He's one of those politicians who's never broken through. He's ignored, nobody really knows who he is. And here's a chance to sort of make a name for himself by being the victim of a kidnapping. And it all goes a bit pear-shaped, shall we say. I really like this film. I mean, it's had indifferent reviews in some places, but I thought a lot of people have missed the point of it. It's a rude, crude film. It's quite violent in places, but it's very funny in an earthy way. And it's quite clever, a clever exploration of sort of the desperation of these three people, none of whom, even Hardy, who you would think has done well in life, even he is struggling to improve things for himself. And it's very nicely and economically directed. It's a very low budget film. A lot of it is set in they hole up in an Airbnb of all places to keep Hardy as their victim. And but there are some of the scenes, it has a bigger scale to it because there are sequences filmed in other places and other locations. And it uses the sort of flashback device to fill in the backgrounds of the characters, how they got where they are. The structure is very clever. I really enjoyed this. I thought it's not for everybody. Some people might think, well, this is rubbish. But I thought it was very enjoyable. And I highly recommend it. It's on Amazon now if you want to rent it or stream it or whatever the young people do these days. A couple of others to mention then. These are sort of fun throwaway films which are available, I think, on Shudder. One's called Quicksand. It's directed by Andres Beltan. Stars Caroline Gaitan and Alan Hawco. Yeah, they're back. It's about these two professionals who've gone to Colombia to do a lecture, but they've actually split up. They're sort of hanging on to the last shreds of their marriage. They go in their separate ways. But during the course of their stay, they got a bit of spare time. They decide to go on this hiking trip. But they their car gets attacked by a sort of a gangster who's trying to rob them. And they end up running into the forest where they fall into some quicksand, hence the title. And the majority of the film, a lot of the film is them stuck in quicksand trying to get out. And as is the way of things in these sorts of films, nothing goes right. They're attacked by a swarm of ants. They're attacked by a snake. One of them is poisoned by the snake. It's a race against time sort of thing. It's very enjoyable for what it is. I mean, the acting's not bad. It's well directed. Visually looks good. And yeah, it is quite tense. Quicksand was one of those things when I was a kid that was sort of fascinating. Because you would often see it in films where people would fall into quicksands and mires and things and drown. Thinking Hound of the Baskervilles, the villain of the piece, ends up falling into effectively quicksand on Dartmoor. And it's an interesting idea, this sand that sort of sucks you down, you can't get out of, and it's the section that does it. There are various techniques about surviving falling into quicksand. Hopefully I won't ever have to put any of them into practice, but this is very good. It's I did enjoy watching this. It's called Quicksand, and I believe it's on Shudder, and I think it's probably coming to physical media. You'll find it if you want to see it. Finally for this episode, talking about Flood, or The Flood in fact. This, I know, is coming to Shudder. I think it's again next week or so, if it's not there already. Stars Nicky Whelan and Casper Van Dien. You may remember that name from Starship Troopers back in the 1990s. Casper Van Dien, I think, is a leading man who never was really. That film, Starship Troopers, wasn't the hit it should have been, and his career never really took off. So he's just turned up in a lot of ropey B movies, and this is a B movie. There's no two ways about it, but it's a very competent one. It's directed by Brandon Slagle, and this is sort of similar to that film Crawl, which you might have seen a few years ago, starring Kay Scodelario, I think her name is. Basically, it's about alligators on the loose. There's this massive storm in Louisiana. A bunch of prisoners being transported from one prison to another. There's a group of baddies who want to spring them, or at least one of them. But because of the storm, they can't travel, so they hole up in a rather ramshackle local police station, which is run by Nikki Whelan, who you'd think she was Angelina Jolie. If you look at her quickly, you think, oh, it's Angelina Jolie. But it isn't. She's quite a tough, no-nonsense woman. And obviously things go slightly wrong when the alligators have escaped from... I can't remember where they escaped from now. The swamps, presumably. And they start flooding into the police station and doing what alligators do in films like this. It's a very silly film. But it's actually very well done. The acting's pretty good. I've read lots of stuff saying that the special effects aren't very good. I didn't really think that. I thought that visually it was okay. I think the alligator scenes are quite well done. There's a couple of scenes where they're not so good. They're sort of plasticky mouths and things. But I think generally it's pretty good. It's quite, it's quite gory. There's lots of gruesome alligator kills, if you like that sort of thing. And all in all, I thought for a sort of a straight to streaming B movie, it wasn't at all bad. So look out for it, coming to Shudder, and I think it's one of those that probably will turn up on DVD and Asda. You'll find it there for a £5 in a few weeks' time. I think it's actually worth a look. It's not bad. It's called The Flood. Right, those are the things I've been watching in the last few weeks. I hope you've enjoyed this little catch up. I've done catch ups previously, and I think people seem to quite like them. So I'll probably do this again. None of these films really deserved a specific video, apart from perhaps A Kind of Kidnap, because I did like it, and I do like to sort of fly the flag for low budget British films, especially when they're by people who I like, and I like Dan Clark stuff. And actually during the Q&A I had a chance to have a quick word with him on the way out, telling him I would review it, and there's a review online at Starburst magazine at the moment if you want to see it. So yeah, these are all the TV recommendations. As I say, there are 5 great shows there, and I'm even including Secret Invasion, because they're all enjoyable. They're not things that you'll regret watching, and certainly if you've watched From before, you'll want to watch the second series. But I think of all of them, Silo is the must-watch, closely followed by Black Mirror. But Silo is it's my show of the year, and I didn't think that would happen after The Last of Us, which was so good. And the films are entertaining, so there's stuff out there. Right, that's me done. Thank you for watching this slightly long video. Hope it's not been too dull. If you've enjoyed it, why don't you just press that subscribe button, which is there. Press that there button. Put the thumbs up as well. Leave a comment if you've seen any of these things, or if you're interested in any of them. Just let me know. I'm done for now. I will see you soon. What's coming next? Ooh. I think I'll be seeing this new horror film, which the name of which has currently eluded me, about the disembodied hand. And then towards the end of the week, we've got the Meg 2, The Trench, with Jason Statham fighting more giant sharks. Can't go wrong. So that's stuff coming up soon, and plus probably other things. So I just wanted to do this just to remind you that I'm still around. And I'll see you soon. Until I do, keep taking the stuff.